I mean, for the cost of making one Hollywood blockbuster, we could solve so many of the problems of aging and maybe even cure it. Asking pharma that vastly been designed to sell drugs that were in a pill form to push gene therapy is very similar to asking oil companies to do solar.
I'm Dr. Esra Çavuşoğlu, and I've been living a sober life for the past 19 years. My battle with addiction drove me to seek new methods, devices, and supplements to improve my physical and mental performance, enhance my quality of life, and ultimately live healthier for longer. From my experiences in addiction recovery, biohacking, and longevity to the latest global developments, from groundbreaking entrepreneurs to expert academics, the conversations I've had over the years are now featured weekly on Soberhead Podcast. Welcome to Soberhead Podcast. In today's conversation, my guest Liz Parrish discusses her pioneering work in gene therapy through her company BioViva Science, focusing on improving healthy human longevity. She emphasizes the importance of gene therapy in extending health span and addressing age-related diseases, while also sharing her personal journey and motivations behind her work. Our discussion covers the economic implications of aging, the selection of specific genes for therapy, and the outcome of her own trials, highlighting the potential benefits and safety considerations of these innovative treatments. Parrish discusses groundbreaking advancements in gene therapy and stem cell treatments, particularly focusing on type 1 diabetes and neurodegenerative diseases. She emphasizes the importance of early intervention and the need for affordable therapies to combat aging and improve health span. Get ready for a deep conversation from ethical considerations to the urgency for public awareness and involvement in these medical innovations. A huge amount of people who watch Soberhead frequently are not subscribed. So, I will ask you a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button now, because when you subscribe, it helps us to make the show better and provides better access to the world-leading experts. I'd like to thank Gedik University and Gedik Foundation for their trust in Soberhead Podcast. With their support, it is possible for us to bring you this content at this quality for absolutely free. Our host for this episode is .sub, the space, community, and platform where creatives, experts, and entrepreneurs come together at the meeting point of continents, the Bosphorus. Follow the link in the show notes for more information about events and membership. Subscribe, like, and share, and I promise to continue to bring you a better Soberhead every day. My dear Liz Parrish, welcome to Soberhead Podcast. We're going to be touching base on very important subject, actually, I know that it's hitting home to you. And it should be hitting home to many people, actually. These longevity talks always understood that it should be for people like rich people to be able to reach to a longer life, longer health span. But your whole vision is different. You have this company called BioViva Science. You guys are dedicated to improve healthy human longevity. It's interesting. Healthy human longevity through gene therapy. I like that description. And you did the first human gene therapy trial on yourself in 2015. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So welcome again. I've been interested into this longevity field for a while. More I dig in, more it's interesting. But since I was going to do the podcast with you, I really did watch some videos with Aubrey de Grey, some with Bill Andrews, some with you. And then suddenly what I realized that all the daily interventions that we're doing, that is suggested like, walk this much and eat this much, don't eat, take these supplements, actually are not going to move the needle at all. Maybe we're not going to be getting sick. We're not going to have diabetes. We're not going to have, let's say, cancer, but it's not going to move the needle to past 100 years old. I mean, it's an interesting thing. So your effort is not only you and many people in your team actually are not just like, trying to help people to live healthier longer, but also more importantly to really treat some life-threatening diseases. And one more thing I'm going to say, then I'm going to let you to explain what you exactly do. You have very important scientists in your board of advisors, such as George Church, which is a Harvard and MIT professor. It's hard to be in both. Bill Andrews, he's called the Telomerase. I'm going to loosely use God word here. Aubrey de Grey. So you're working with all these minds and brains in the field that really trying to resolve this whole complicated, sophisticated issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
gosh, I mean, you just go on because I'm loving. I'm loving this. Yeah. So we're focused on gene therapy, and I think that that's what differentiates us, outside of a lot of other groups are working on. We have really gathered, I think, the best in class for longevity, trajecting it forward with the best minds in the world who are really thinking outside of the box and want a better future. And as you said, the interventions that we can do in our daily life do gain us middle years. Essentially, the middle years of life. So, if you want to get the best out of your middle years and extend your health span within a natural lifespan, which might not get you too much, but it's definitely worth doing. You definitely want to optimize, your diet and your exercise. You don't want to smoke. You don't want to drink alcohol. Okay. So those would be the things that are proven to get you better middle years. Now, they won't necessarily stave off the diseases of aging at all, but they might delay them. So they might delay your cancer and your metabolic disorders. But if you want to actually, break the bottleneck of lifespan, then we're going to have to pull out the big guns, and that's the gene and cell technologies. And that's where the curative medicine lies. So we're a health span company, but we're definitely for pushing that health span as far into the future as we possibly can.
Maybe we should start by explaining what gene therapy actually are, because, we've been hearing about CRISPR for a while now. People are aware of that. And there's the other end that I did, Brian Johnson did, whatever, biohackers did, the mini circle, Follistatin gene therapy. So there's that other end, but yours is kind of in the middle. So maybe you want to explain all three of them to people so that they have an understanding, an idea. What are they and how much it helps and what it is good for?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything is under the umbrella of gene therapy. So from plasmids all the way through what we do to CRISPR are all gene therapies. CRISPR and the type of gene therapies that we do are delivered with vectors, and they're meant to be long-lasting. So they're meant to last for 5 years to the rest of your life. And we do this by actually delivering the genetic material into the nucleus of the cell for long-term expression. The plasmids that you had mentioned are on the very short-acting end. We have several companies that are looking at those, and they might last for 24 hours to a week or more. They're kind of like a long-lasting peptide type of therapy. And so they come with a short time frame, and they're very inexpensive to make. The technology that we work on is much more expensive to make and more long-lasting. And then CRISPR is about the same cost because it's delivered with the same technology that we use, so we can deliver CRISPR as well. And what that does is CRISPR actually edits your genome. So it can cut genes in your genome. It can insert genes into your genome. Where we lie is in the technology that's a bit safer, a lot safer, in the sense that we just put a gene into the nucleus of the cell. We're not trying to integrate into your genome. We're just putting a gene into the nucleus of the cell where it can use the machinery to code a long-term expression of that gene. So in gene therapy, we're just basically inserting, deleting, or replacing genes that are in your cells. And again, we specialize in inserting genes.
And you have so far, I think, 4 of them. One is follistatin. The other one is Klotho. One is, that's a mouthful, the Telomerase Reverse Transcriptase gene. I was able to say it. And then PGC1 alpha. What would be the opening of PGC1 alpha?
So PGC1 alpha is for mitochondrial biogenesis. Okay. So it would be for metabolic disorder or for stronger muscles. You know, when we look at non-human primates, they are much smaller than us, but they're very, very strong. And that's probably because they have upregulation of mitochondrial function. Your mitochondria create the energy for your cells. And so having that sort of mitochondrial boost means that your muscles, even at a smaller size, can be more powerful.
So let's now go back to your story, because you have a very important drive and a reason that you want to resolve this issue. The way you started the company and made yourself the guinea pig, let's say.
Yeah. So in 2011, I started volunteering for a stem cell project. And for 2 years, we learned a lot about stem cells and what was happening in regenerative medicine. And we started to look at, you know, the genes behind stem cells, why a stem cell could help regenerate tissues in the body, but other cells really didn't have that regenerative property. And I fell in love with genetics at about the time my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And being thrown into the world of children's hospital and childhood disease, you know, in societies today, we vastly act like this doesn't happen, like there isn't childhood disease anymore for most of the world who's overcome most of these conditions. But when you're in children's hospital, you know, you're immersed in a world of childhood cancers and congenital defects and things like autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes. And I actually was really shocked. And I was appalled to find out that all of this technology that I had learned about in regenerative medicine did not translate to children. They considered it experimental medicine, and they wouldn't use it, even in the cases where kids were dying. So it really, you know, I always say we came home from the hospital, but I never really came home. I started looking at conferences all over the world, trying to figure out how we could translate medicine to these kids who so desperately needed it. And I ended up at a conference that was about aging. Professor George Church from Harvard, MIT, as you mentioned in the beginning, was speaking there. And I thought that he might have some answers around genetics and what we could do. But during my time at the conference, he came on as a co-founder of the company, by the way, 2 years later. So, you know, we had some synergies, he being much smarter than I. But at the conference, I realized that the difference between 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds in a time frame of life isn't that much different. And I found out that a bunch of the genes that can treat the young years, the childhood diseases, are the same as that will treat the aging population. After many discussions after that conference, I found out that using drugs in children was very difficult, and these were generally things that were spearheaded by things like children's hospitals, who around the world now have gone on to create multitude of gene therapies that are FDA approved or EU approved for children, but that private companies generally weren't brought in to do those type of things. But treating an aging population with similar genes, we could get a safety profile and expedite the treatments to both groups, then help the aging population live healthier longer, which is great for the economy, and it's great for health, and it's great for people. And it's also great for children because we de-risk the technology for them and help them live healthier longer and cure their diseases. So it's kind of like the whole thing came to a monstrous head, and I realized that, you know, therein lied everything for everyone. And so every gene that we choose, from the 4 that you talked about to the 8 that we have up and coming, are associated with both childhood disease and aging-associated disease.
I looked to some numbers I'm trying to find just before we started. They say that, for example, the global cost of dementia alone was estimated at over $1 trillion per year by 2018. Some crazy numbers. Anyone 65 and older, it's costing a lot of money to the governments to treat these age-related diseases. I was more moved actually when I was preparing myself to first I was excited, gene therapy, telomeres are going to get longer and I'm going to be smarter, which one I would pick if I could. I was thinking these. Then when I started getting ready for all these, you have a combat and you're saying like, everybody deserves this. This is human rights. You're not just saying this is rich people's rights. This is human rights. People needs to be treated for these diseases that it's really debilitating them to live. Their family don't want them because it's very difficult to deal with, let's say, dementia, Parkinson, or any of these diseases. Or when these are children, then it's very heartbreaking for the families because I know myself, few families actually who their loved one has type 1 diabetes. First shocking, then difficult thing to manage. Then also there are all these, neurodegenerative diseases that are really high now. Very young people keep getting it. So how did you pick what made you choose these 4 genes to work on?
Well, I mean, it was vastly because we could have the biggest impact upon all-cause mortality with these. They had the largest profile of scientific data to show that they were ready for humans. There are new genes that will be coming on that have shown lots of human evidence, and we'll be bringing those on soon. And they all tackle a different part of biological aging or disease at its core. So when we look at a disease like neurodegenerative disease in young children, there are several subsets of diseases there. When we look at the middle age group of myelin sheath deterioration in some diseases that we find in middle life, and then we look at the cognitive decline associated with most neurodegenerative diseases of dementia in the older age groups, Klotho is a gene that can actually benefit all 3 age groups. And so that would be a high target for the gene therapy. We were the first company in the world to do a clinical study with Klotho in humans with dementia. And it showed benefit. So, we're fast to move and we're fast to work, but we also want things to be affordable. Certainly, people with money, with significant amount of funds, can go and access these technologies now. But those same people don't want to pay $1 trillion in taxes every year just to covering an aging-associated problem in a socioeconomic, unstable country in which most of the industrialized countries are now. We have less people under the age of 5 than over the age of 60 in many of the countries. And so, therefore, there is no workforce coming to actually pay the taxes for those debilitating diseases. And as you said, in the U.S. alone, it's over $1 trillion a year. You add up all of this globally, and it becomes exceptionally expensive. If we pay forward for the research, we can then eradicate these diseases or even delay them. And it was David Sinclair that has a beautiful paper on delaying these diseases, and it's something like $300 trillion over 10 years that just the U.S. would save in a myriad of verticals because there's a multitude of costs associated with these diseases. Not only are they terrorize the public. We're all afraid of getting old and becoming dependent or losing our mind or getting cancer. We lose work, when our family members are sick and we have to stay home and take care of them. We lose finances into the health system that's just basically bleeding out for these diseases. And in David's paper, it was only by slowing aging by a year. I think that the technology we have now, we could at least slow it by 5.
One of your talk, I heard some amazing numbers that with Klotho gene therapy, the IQ can jump like at 10 points. Am I making it up?
Oh, no, you're not.
It was like, I was like thinking, oh my God, because you were saying if you're very smart, it will take you into a genius level IQ.
Yeah, if there's a myriad of IQ scores, and we have the people on the low end who are vastly dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. When we do the Klotho gene therapy, we see a jump. I think the low end is 8, the high end is 14, and those are IQ points. And that can vastly change the area in which, from highly unstable and, having a difficult time surviving all the way to genius. It just pushing these people into new ranges would be massively beneficial for the public. But of course, we all want to go into that genius range.
Of course.
We also have to think about, people who are even having a hard time joining the workforce, just getting into a normal range and being able to live on their own. Right now, we have an astounding amount of people who have had children with disorders, from spectrum disorders that are not socially functional to less functional Down syndrome to other syndromes in which, this could actually help these people be self-sustaining where, their parents are not afraid to move them into their own housing and being able to take care of themselves. So from one end of the spectrum to another, we could definitely use more geniuses on the planet, but we could also use to alleviate the healthcare system from people who are having a hard time and struggling.
The first two that you did was telomerase and follistatin, I guess.
Yeah, you've done your homework. So in 2015, we launched the company with the audacious idea that we could just open source these technologies to the world and that people would start taking them. Since then, the company had to do a lot of shifting. We had to start to apply for patents and things like that so that other companies couldn't lock us out. And so we went ahead and did those things. But yeah, it was really a cry out to the scientific community and to the world that we had sat on research for so long and that, we were asking the wrong industries to push new medicine forward. So, asking pharma that vastly been designed to sell drugs that were in a pill form to push gene therapy is very similar to asking oil companies to do solar. We always have a wish list to probably the wrong companies to solve the problems that we need solved, but probably are not in their wheelhouse. Now, since then, pharmaceutical companies have become interested in gene therapies, but it's taken a long time and years after my own gene therapy.
Would you mind sharing the outcomes so that people know?
Yeah, so in 2015, I did telomerase reverse transcriptase and follistatin. I'm going to give you the whole trajectory. In 2020, I did some more telomerase reverse transcriptase, some more follistatin, PGC1 alpha, and Klotho. In 2024, I did Klotho again. And then early this year in 2025, I did more telomerase reverse transcriptase and a tiny bit of follistatin because it was available from a product run. And so what we've seen since 2015 in my T lymphocytes, these are the telomere lengths associated with your white blood cells that are associated with your immune system, is that for every year I have lived, my telomeres have lengthened by 5.3 years. We published that in, I think, 2021. I can give you all the papers so that you can list them for the talk. And then the same year, I think that we published that, or maybe the year before, we published on the 5-person dementia study with telomerase reverse transcriptase and Klotho. I did that therapy before those patients did the therapy, so that's why I was retreated in 2020. I have a philosophy that before anyone takes the risk, I'll take the risk and try the new protocol and do the new therapy before they do. And then let's see, in my follistatin, so, you'll often see other companies are advertising our data. So you'll see my thighs out there on a lot of people's advertisements, but that's with our gene therapy. And what we saw was increased muscle mass and decreased intramuscular fat. We saw better metabolic markers, lower triglycerides, lower HbA1cs, overall better functioning health. Before I took the first gene therapies, I had elevated liver enzymes, and I no longer have that. And I had like chronic kidney pain, and I no longer have that. But that's anecdotal because it wasn't something that we were really seeking out. So in 2015, there was not a lot of biological aging tests available, but we did do the telomeres, we did MRIs, and we did all of the blood testing. And so those are the markers that we can really hang our hat on that go before my gene therapies to all the way after.
So you're doing them then to make sure that they're safe, not to improve your health. I mean, I'm sure there's that too, but that's not the main purpose.
So when we first started, it literally was just a safety study. There was concern from people around the company when they found out that we had done this. We didn't tell our advisors that we were going to do this because we figured that they might back out, or worse yet, they might call some authorities on us. And so when we started calling the advisors after I'd done the gene therapy, we lost an advisor right away. He quit because he thought that maybe what we had done was unethical. And actually, that was fine for us. We wanted to cut the fat off. We didn't want anyone who was going to hold us back or hold us to making the future the way it had been planned by the US FDA and everything else. We thought that was wrong because it's leading to people dying. So it wasn't something that we were going to support in them either. The rest of the advisors stayed, but some of them thought that I might die in a pretty short period of time. One advisor gave me 13 days.
Oh, wow.
But we had read the literature. We had spent 2 years on this literature, and there was no increased risk of cancer. There was no increased risk of dying. As a matter of fact, it looked like by every intensive study on human cells and in animal organisms that this was our best bet to actually break the lifespan bottleneck. So I'm living proof of that, and now a lot of other people have participating in it as well.
If you remember when we did the first talk, I asked you about the cancer actually, because I have some researcher friends, and one of the fears that they have with these using even supplements for extended telomeres, they're worried that, the cancer does the same thing. So would it cause cancer or would it fuel the existing cancer? So what's your thought about that?
The thing is that all studies show a reduced risk of cancer. And so when you look at cancer and you study cancer, you'll see that telomerase does help like 85% of cancers grow. Not all of them, but it helps some of them grow. But the telomerase is one of 21 hallmarks. You have to have the other 20 things go wrong with your cell and to actually get cancer. Emit telomerase in the cells and you keep the telomeres long, you're at a minimal risk of getting cancer. So what causes cancer outside of, things coming from the sky like radiation is short telomeres. So if your telomeres are short, you basically have genomic instability. Your cell goes onto the borderline of going senescent, which would save it. But if it doesn't go senescent fast enough, you're likely to get cancers. And probably the number one risk for that happening is having immune senescence. So having short telomeres in your immune system means your immune system can no longer survey the system and remove those. So remember, almost every day we're developing cancerous-like cells, but our immune system obliterates that. When the telomeres get short in your immune system, so when telomeres are critically short, your cells can no longer divide, and that's your immune system cells as well. So there was a couple of papers out during COVID-19, the number one risk for dying of COVID-19 is short telomeres in your immune system, because your immune system cannot, like if you have one cell in your immune system, it can't attack all of the virus. But if that cell can divide, it has long telomeres and it can divide in a multitude of cells. Now it has a whole army to go after an infectious disease. So, I would say that your risk of cancer is high, very high with short telomeres. We know that's why we see cancer take off at the age of 80 in all populations. But if you keep them long, you're going to protect yourself from getting that. And I can't say that with 100% certainty, but that's what we see in animal models. That's what we see in human cells. And that's what Bill Andrews tells us consistently from his research. And so he is our main advisor on telomerase reverse transcriptase.
So let me then ask you a personal question. Were you able to help your children?
Yeah, so that is the biggest question. So how does this relate to type 1 diabetes? Because type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. It's not controlled by these genes. So what we did is we met with researchers around the world And we are with a concierge company in Switzerland. It's a holding company in Switzerland. We're building the first cure for type 1 diabetes. So what this did is genes, we looked into a bunch of gene therapies that were associated with making insulin at the cellular level for type 1 diabetics, but they're all a little bit rough. So what we can do now is we can take the patient's cells, your skin cells, we can turn them into iPS cells. We reprogram them down to an embryonic state. We can turn them into beta islet cells and deliver them into immune privileged places in your body. And this project is going live this year. And so even though the gene therapies didn't pan out yet, a definitive cure for type 1 diabetes, it did introduce me to all the people that could make that happen. So yes, this new cell therapy will work as a functional cure for type 1 diabetes. The fear is that maybe the people create some amount of insulin, but not enough. And so it's going to need to be titrated. We might be able to hit it in one treatment. We might have to do multiple treatments, but for the patients, it's very easy. Or that it might only last a few years. But as we know with type 1 diabetes, a few years at a time while we work on the genetic cure is okay. It would be great to be off the insulin and be off the high and low blood sugars. So yeah, I can say that we're going to close that chapter and I'm not going to stop there. So I'm in way too deep to say, okay, now we have cured my son's type 1. Everyone else can figure it out. I'm going to stick with it and we're going to knock off one disease at a time and hopefully the mother of all maladies, because these kids who have had juvenile onset or you get it in 20s or 30s, it really doesn't matter. If you have type 1 diabetes, there are people going to be out there watching this. You know how it is. At first, it's really hard. Then it becomes normalized, but it's not good for your body and you don't get to live the same way that everybody else lives. So by extending human health span and lifespan, we're going to give you back those decades. And I'm committed to do that. My son was diagnosed at 9. He's 22 now. And I want to give him back the decades that he lost to dealing with that disease. And we should give that back to everyone and be happy and ready to take it for ourselves, because with that time, we can do even more good for the world.
Now that we're talking about young people, it seems like there are a couple of very serious diseases that you guys already saw super improvements, like muscle atrophies and stuff, so that we can give hope to people who are watching and listening, so that, what are the diseases that you were able to say, hey, with these genes, we were able to resolve this?
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they look at gene therapy, because it's a new concept to them, they think, oh, this isn't, there's no gene therapies that are for humans yet. But there are actually 12 approved gene therapies now that have revolutionized patients' lives. Some of the most recent gene therapies were in CRISPR, and they're for beta thalassemia and sickle cell anemia. And now those have a functional cure. But the earliest gene therapies started in severe combined immune deficiency, and you might know that as boy in the bubble disease. These were people with an autoimmune disorder in which they had no immune system that functioned towards disease on the outside. So just a cold could kill them as a young child. And so severe combined immune deficiency saw a treatment in the early 1990s. And I believe that the first child that was treated actually still speaks publicly about their experience with that. But that has been fully approved. Hemophilia A and hemophilia B have a curative treatment through gene therapy now that you can access. Duchenne's muscular dystrophy has 2 companies that have treatments in the United States. There are about 35 that we don't include in the regular gene therapy category, like the gene therapy we do, but those are all in cancer. So there are CAR T therapies. Those are also considered gene therapies. But lipoprotease disease is cured. There's just, I don't have the list of them in front of me, but there's been adrenoleukodystrophy. That's a childhood disease as well. Spinal muscular atrophy. That was one of the latest approvals in just somatic cell delivery. The problem with these therapies is that they are considered the most expensive drugs in the world. And it's because the populations that have these conditions are small. And so you do all of this drug development, and then you launch a therapy that has a curative effect, is going to save the company or the insurance company and the family millions of dollars, and then they put too high of a price on it. When we look at treating aging-associated non-communicable diseases, we look at being able to scale affordable diseases and make treating these what are considered monogenic diseases, single gene mutation diseases, free. I mean, those could just be treated for free once we hit the aging market. It's the biggest medical unmet need on the planet. So, there is a way to make childhood treatments just absolutely free by selling treatments even affordably for the biggest killers on the planet.
It shows actually that, FDA approved gene therapies is like about, what did you say, like $3.5 million versus when you do go to offshore, it's like a fracture of it almost.
Yeah, it really is. So the gene therapies are still expensive because making a gene therapy costs a couple $100,000. But if we scale them, if we made 10, each gene therapy would cost $125,000. If we made 100, now we're getting them down to $90,000. If we're made 1,000, now we're getting them down to $50,000. And so you can see with scale, we can make affordable therapies. But yeah, so if you did a whole body infusion in the United States, it would cost, probably $5 million. If it was an approved gene therapy. But if you went offshore, it probably costs, $350,000. That's still too much for almost everyone, but that's making a one-off gene therapy for one person in an investigator-initiated clinical study. It just becomes so much more affordable.
Liz, also you are doing a partnership with the cell reprogramming. So like stem cell reprogramming.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's RegenCell.
Yeah, RegenCell. Yeah, that's kind of very important. It seems like it's going to change the whole arena of these cell treatments and gene treatments.
Yeah. So when we look at therapies that will treat aging, we have to look at the hallmarks of aging. We have to look at what's happening at the cellular level and what's happening at the whole organism level. And at the cellular level, one thing, our telomeres are getting short, and then our cells can't divide, meaning our stem cells can no longer repair the tissues in our body. We're also having a lot of issues with nutrient sensing and mitochondrial dysfunction. But if we take all of those hallmarks out, we're left with something that's really important, and that's what the telomeres are associated with, which is stem cell depletion. So you have special cells in your body, and they regenerate everything from a cut, a nick. You might have shaved your legs this morning and nicked your ankle, and now your stem cells are going to go in there, and they're going to divide, and they're going to repair your body. The problem is by the time you're 65, you only have 5% of them left. And so you're basically working with a depleted pool of regenerative medicine in your body. And, a lot of people say just remove the senescent cells from your body, but your senescent cells are one of the reasons that we're a long-lived species, because your stem cells can't repair all of your body anymore. So then we start to get thin, shiny skin, and those are senescent cells. We start to get fat in our bone marrow. We start to basically suffer from the attrition of stem cells. So when this company came to me and they said, we want to take your stem cells, use your technology, reprogram them so that they are you, but when you were 15 years old. Mm-hmm. We want to lengthen their telomeres, and we want to put them back in your body. I said, yep, And we signed a contract to license our technology to them. And I went to Costa Rica and I did apheresis, where I took a drug and then for 3 days, I only needed to take it for one because I've taken so much gene therapy, and I dumped 10 times more stem cells than they'd ever seen anyone dump in the shortest amount of time. They pulled me off of the machine just after a half hour and they said, we've got more than enough. And we're going to reprogram those cells and genetically modify them and put them back in. And there's a couple people who are going to do it with me. And then we're going to launch that to the world so that you at 65 can have the same amount of stem cells that you did when you were 20. And then your body doesn't have to be full of senescent cells anymore. Then we can systematically remove those senescent cells either through gene therapy or small molecules and make it so your body is actually regenerating without the inflammatory markers that those senescent cells are sending off. And then we have multiple verticals where we're going to also treat neurodegenerative disease. And so, okay, if you're older, you don't have any stem cells, we give you Follistatin. How are you going to build muscle if you have no precursors to muscle cells? We're going to give back your stem cells, and they're going to be plumb fit with the genes that are associated with making stronger, better muscles. So it's really exciting. When you do a systemic gene therapy, you're going to get a lot more gene therapy to all of your body. That's cool. But when you do stem cells, you're putting it right where you need it for the regeneration. And I mean, I'm tickled pink about this because it'll make the gene therapy more affordable in the sense that we use less gene therapy, but it'll also give the biggest impact to replenishing you with your own stem cells. So a lot of people are like, I didn't give my stem cells when I was a little kid, so I don't have any of my young stem cells. Now you can have your young stem cells reprogrammed to your cells, and then gene modified. So this is going live in, I think that we already started our own internal studies, and then we'll have a product within, I think, a year and a half for people.
You're pairing them. I opened one of the slides that you guys were using, like the mesenchymal stem cells plus Klotho, enhanced cognition. So you're kind of pairing whichever stem cell is appropriate with whichever gene therapy.
Yeah, because you have to put these into the areas where they will differentiate into the right cells, not all stem cells. So there's 3 types of stem cells that we'll be working with, and they're very specific to certain zones in the body. And with that one, we want to go specifically to the hippocampus and other areas of the brain that are associated with long-term memory and circadian rhythms.
And are they all given through IV or what else?
So we're going to work with Dr. Shelley Jordan, and he has a technology where he can image guide this resonance to the hippocampus. And he says that you could then inject the drug anywhere and he can get it to the area that he is focused on, which is fantastic. We hope to be able to do this with the heart and other tissues of the body as well. But in some cases, if we're just going it alone without some sort of focused energy, for muscles, we'll just be doing intramuscular injections. For the liver, we'll probably just do IV or portal vein. And so there are different modes of directionality that we would use. But if we've treated your stem cells outside of neurodegenerative disease, we just need to get them in the blood system because we want them to repopulate your bone marrow. We want them to go in and sit in the niches where they're supposed to be so that they are hypervigilant, not only in your system, regenerating it, but they go back to the niches so that they can continue to make new and accessible stem cells for decades.
Yeah, I watched the presentation at A4M. Sheldon Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it, and it was like the mice that their parts of the brain was taking out and they were getting old and then suddenly given back some exosomes and the mouse was getting younger.
Yeah, his work, he's published in Nature, and he's just done amazing work with the brain. He's basically the doctor to the stars all over the world. He's resetting the central aging clock. And he's so awesome because he goes on stage and he'll say, you can take one of our therapies and it'll make you very calm. And everyone laughs because he's like in front of 1,500 people and he's completely calm. He's not slow. He's witty, he's fast, but he's calm. When I have to go on stage in front of 1,000 people, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, hey, when I get out there, he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm going to show you about this technology. He has a unique way of working with the central aging clock of the brain that also eradicates depression and anxiety, and apparently is incredibly good for OCD and addiction. And what that does is it makes your brain calm. It's not your brain on the drugs of cortisol. It's your brain on natural calmness.
All these people, like you're either they're in your board or you're friends with them or competing with them. Where do you see we are at? So like some says we need 20 years, some says 30 years, some says 3 years to this like jumping through that barrier that is holding people not to get their life extended.
I don't think that there's, it's really a cost barrier, but that can be handled by scale. So it really is just finding the right investors and the right locations that want to go into this. We're seeing the Middle East ramp up. They're building ethical platforms for regenerative medicine. They have the money to do it. We work on legal systems and regulation, and we're just so happy to see places with the financial wherewithal to actually treat populations and be interested in treating their civilians and getting them healthy as well. So, I feel like it's just, curing all of aging. I don't know how far away we are with that because we need the finances to see if everything we have right now will work. And as far as competition, I really don't think my company has any.
I meant competition meaning like, other companies. I didn't mean you guys are competing.
Yeah, no, you might be competing for a market, but we're doing the real science. And so it's always going to win. We can build any gene therapy. So we can do reprogramming. We can do any of the new gene therapies. We license out a myriad of programs. So I don't think about it as competition. We're hopefully all working together and we hopefully all want to cure everyone. So, it's going to take an army. My bigger concerns is when technologies may not work as well as we wish they would, and people are spending money on them. But
what do you mean by that?
If you're selling something that isn't going to have a long-term benefit, but it costs a lot of money, that's detrimental. People may not want to then participate again. But what we see is people generally get into the lower levels and then they come up and they start using our therapies. And then we want to make our therapies better as well. That's why we're working on the CMV platform so that we can deliver all the genes at one time. That better technology for the world, because then the world, somebody who doesn't have a lot of money or countries that don't have a lot of money to put into healthcare will only have to, purchase one gene therapy per patient for a subset of certain genes. There might be, as we grow, there might be 16 genes that you really need. And so maybe it's not just one therapy, but you'd be able to get it at, if we can get 3 into 1, it's 1/3 of the cost. And that's going to be beneficial as well. So we're all reiterating and we're all making things better. And until we have cured all of aging, which is going to take all of us working together. So again, there is no competition. I work with 2 companies that are working on cellular reprogramming in humans with small molecules, and they have human data. And the world doesn't even know that. And of course, we want to work with them because cellular reprogramming that way might be more efficient than the gene therapies. We don't know. So all these companies, you're going to see them coming together and making the future technology that everyone will need. It's like, I don't think it pays off to just like think in the short term of, I just want to do one thing. I want to do it all.
I was just going to ask that when you were talking, but I want to add that to something else. I was listening to something that Bill Andrews was saying, and yes, it's a big money, but it's not that big of a money now that the world became so rich. Like he was like, give me $200 million and I will resolve the telomerase, or give Liz. He was literally saying, it's not like, now that the world is talking about like hundreds of billions of dollars, this is like nothing compared to what people do.
I mean, for the cost of making one Hollywood blockbuster, we could solve so many of the problems of aging and maybe even cure it just by, sheer brunt force. And, the reason why I really like my teams of people, we work with young and old people. The older people in our area of longevity, they have the most to lose. They are working their buns off so that they can stay alive and they can stay in the game of life because they love living and they have spent their entire life researching technology. And I just don't understand sometimes when they're not getting the funding, when the old ideas had never even been vetted out to total fact. I mean, that was what BioViva was doing. We were just picking up technologies that had already been in research that not one company picked up as a viable option for humans, and yet they had all of this data, and it wasn't data from one place. It was data from multitude of universities, multitude of labs that said that these could extend lifespan and health span, so you could live healthy longer. And the big idea was actually the small idea of let's just pick up everything and take it forward so that humans can use it, because at the end of the day, the patient's the most important person. And if you're wondering, like, how people feel on our side of this, from Bill Andrews to George Church to me and everyone else who are just trying to make this happen, we are contacted all the time by people with devastating diseases. We all have a devastating disease. We have a ticking time bomb. And don't wait for your diagnosis. You need to take it very seriously now, because the people who contact me who have devastating genetic mutations, who have devastating diseases, it's hard enough to get them treated than for the whole world to wait until they're sick and then actually finally want a drug. We need people to get involved now.
Question. So we spoke all about the disease, old people, young people, disease and stuff. About people who are like you and me, we're healthy. At least we think we're healthy. Would it be beneficial? You shared your numbers, but maybe you're not paying so much attention to every single detail. I don't know, because you're in it. What would be the benefits of people who are doing these therapies when they're younger or healthier? Would it stop them to get the devastating Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, heart disease?
That's what we want to find out. So right now, we typically work in sick people, or we have companies who can ethically work in healthier people by consent, but they have to be in a cohort over a certain age, because it's done as safely and ethically as possible. But as we garner the safety data on these therapies, I am certain we are going to find that probably the best time to give them is around the age of 25. The thing is, by the time you're in your 20s, you have accumulated damage. We can see aging in the body. There's indications that you can find early that would preclude disease. And plus, we know that anyone who is 25 who is not genetically modified is certainly going to die of the diseases of aging if they don't accidentally die of something else before that. We know how humans die. There is no secret here. There's no one watching this who's got, someone in their family that's somehow superseding 122 at this point. At least that's what all the data tells us. And so we know that intervening earlier would probably be better. It would probably give people the biggest bang for the buck. But we can't do that now, because ethically we have to make sure that these are safe, and we need to watch them for a certain amount of time before they would be disseminated in that way.
What if they have the money and they go offshore? They don't,
Probably none of my business. Then
but
generally the offshore is, like age 45 and up. I mean, that's just a typical subset. If they're working with a doctor, if, we're working within a regulatory system and we have a country that really wants to move this forward and they want to do a group of people who are younger. I mean, I honestly don't think they're going to see a detriment as long as safe doses are used. But the pan out of the benefit will take decades to see. You'll see people who are just aging more slowly and healthy. And, if we treated somebody who was 20, we're going to have to wait, 100 years, 105 years to find out if we've done it. Now, we should see it in the biomarkers like we see in my biomarkers and other patients, but you still have to do a long distance run. So should it be done? Absolutely. But, we should make sure that it's safe for those groups, as safe as possible.
So how often one needs to do that? You said that you've been doing it because there were revisions, therefore that you were repeating some of these therapies. So in the best case, let's say that for someone who has early onset dementia in the earlier, let's say in their 60s.
What we need to do is look at cellular life. So neurons are incredibly long-lived cells. We need to look at dosages. The reason that we started working on CMV is we wanted something that was redosable, that humans could do themselves at home. So right now, if you took the dementia therapy, you would need to travel to a clinic. You'd have to get a bunch of pre-testing done first and a functional MRI. Then you would travel to a location and you would get intranasal injections and you would stay there for a few days. And then you would travel home and you'd be back at it. You would do some post testing for us. At 1 year, you would do another functional MRI, but you'd be doing your IQ testing and cognitive testing and your blood work. But, would it need to be done every 5 years? Maybe. We don't know, because the thing is that dementia is very hard to get ahead of once it's already in action. Once the wheels are turning, we're in trouble. Okay. But with the CMV, the future, we're hoping, and that needs a lot of money and a lot of work. But the idea is that you would go to the clinic, you would do your pre-testing, you'd get your diagnosis. They would do your first spray, because AAV has to be injected. CMV could just be sprayed. And then you would go home and maybe every month or every 6 months, depending on your diagnosis, you would take another spray. You'd be able to bump up your gene therapy right at home.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Liz, what would be your message to people who are listening? People who are ill, people who are still young, people who might have an interest at some point to invest. What would be the important thing that they need to know, what you guys are doing and what's happening, and we need to change this in a way?
I would take it very seriously. I would take the concept of gene therapy into your vocabulary. I would start researching it. I would start watching some talks that different people have done on the super benefits of specific genes and start thinking about which ones you would want to take first if you're going to take them. And I would measure that risk against what we already know is happening in your body. You are slowly dying by decay. So whether you're 20 or you're 80, if you're 80, I would take it much more seriously and share information with your Congress people, the government, your friends. Again, it needs to enter the vocabulary so that we can get a mandate that people want to use this technology. I feel like we already have that mandate. We really don't even have time to waste, even for people who are born today. With the way that bureaucracy works and the slow churning of regulations. At one point, it was made to make you safe, and now it is slowed almost to a complete halt. And that could be leading to the death of many people, of conditions that may be treatable even with the gene therapies that we're talking about today. So I can't implore you more to find some way to get involved and make it happen, because it's the future of our species. We today, so people say, well, is taking a gene therapy ethical? Is this playing God? If you've had antibiotics and immunization and open heart surgery, if you've suffered from pneumonia and you went to the hospital, you're beyond that conversation. You've already used modern medicine to help your life be better, and using technology to help us live longer and better will help us solve tomorrow's problems. Every country was industrialized off of lifespan. When we live long enough, we start doing amazing things. And making people realize that they're going to sit here longer on this planet is going to help them treat the planet better. It's going to help them treat each other better. And it's going to help us push for a better, healthier future for everyone. And that's something that we should want to see, a world of abundance. So this is no different than the medicine that you've already been taking, except for it's better and it comes with fewer side effects.
Thank you so much for your time. I think that since last couple of years with these fancy biohacking, longevity, all these words were thrown at people as rich people's problem. But the way that we describe and explained what these therapies are really doing, it's so much different than what people would think. So actually, that's what I try to do with my podcast. I try to bring the knowledge to people they don't care about doctor-to-doctor conversations. They care more about things that, there's such thing like that. I am able to start them to be mobilized and either ask questions or wonder or, who knows what the future would bring. But thank you for your time.
I thank you for doing that, because that is the hardest part for all of us, is to just, how do you get this into people's homes so that they understand what's happening?
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that my audience are going to be really enjoying this episode. Again, I'm the only podcast in Turkey that are doing this mix batches of topics. And I'm really enjoying it. But thank you for your hard work and being the guinea pig trial. But take me in. I'm willing to try it with you.
Come on,
I'm courageous like that. I would love to at some point to join. Hopefully we'll figure out something. But thank you again.
You're amazing. Thank you for having me, and thank you for showing the world what's happening so they have access to it. And I want you with me. I want you with me for the future.